Order, call the member for Lawler.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Just like Labor members speaking before me today, mine is an electorate that depends upon manufacturing. More Wyndham residents work in manufacturing than any other industry. 10.6% of local people work as machine operators and drivers. That is almost double the national average and represents over 10,000 workers. 15% work in related industry as tradespeople and technicians. This constitutes 15,000 local residents, Deputy Speaker. So Monday's announcement regarding Toyota was a heavy blow for my community, not just for those working directly for Toyota, but for those in components industries, those working for related small businesses. What the government don't seem to understand is that the economy is akin to an ecosystem, and when you rip huge holes in it, the shockwaves spread. This will spread across our community, Deputy Speaker, to the contracted technicians and cleaners who depend upon work from Toyota, to those who work in the laundries that service the Toyota plant, even to those who work in the local cafe where Toyota employees stop for their morning coffee. The list goes on and extends deep into the families and communities of my electorate and into Melbourne's West as a whole. This will hurt husbands, wives, partners and children, neighbours and friends. Many will already be facing financial stress, struggling to meet mortgage payments, rent, groceries. This is yet another burden to bear. And, Deputy Speaker, I know that this is a sentiment being felt around the country by Holden workers in Elizabeth, by those with Rio Tinto and Nhulunbuy, by SPC employees in Shepparton. The Australian manufacturing industry is hurting and Australian workers are hurting. And yet, Deputy Speaker, we have a government that simply doesn't seem to care. A government so irresponsible they fail to intervene time and time again, even when it will cost hundreds of thousands their livelihood. This back-to-the-future government will take us back to a country that only exports raw materials, like we did last century. And this government that cares so little for Australian workers, they are willing to break promise after promise. I draw your attention to the statement the Prime Minister made on 28 November 2012, and I quote, "I am committing a future coalition government to creating 1 million new jobs within 5 years and 2 million new jobs over the next decade." But then yesterday, Deputy Speaker, or the day before, Mr Abbott said in this very chamber, governments do not create jobs. And he has no plan for manufacturing jobs. So which is it, Prime Minister? Is this your solemn promise, Prime Minister? And if you think it couldn't get any worse, Deputy Speaker, you'd be wrong. Because now not only have they broken yet another solemn promise to workers, they're now blaming them, demonising them when they lose their jobs. It's easy to swan around Parliament in the air conditioning and plush surrounds, while at the same time complaining that manufacturing workers have it too easy. Their attitude seems to be they earn too much, they ask too much. Really? Is a worker who wants fair wages and conditions asking too much? Would the Prime Minister be willing to look Toyota workers, Holden workers, SPC workers in the eye this week and tell them they earn too much? Of course he wouldn't, because bullies are really cowards. But instead of bullying Australian workers, maybe the Abbott government should examine its conscience. What kind of government attacks people who have just lost their jobs, and what kind of government spreads misinformation about the conditions of workers so as to mitigate their own responsibility? The answer, Deputy Speaker, is just across the chamber. The Prime Minister must ask himself these questions and more. Who is he really governing for? If it's not for hard-working Australians, if it's not for small businesses, if it's not for Australian industries, then who? Because a government that believes in a fair, just and more prosperous Australia with opportunity for all wouldn't be doing this, Deputy Speaker. They just wouldn't. And so we see the starkest contrast between the Liberal and Labor parties. We support workers, they do not. We support the manufacturing industry, they do not. And we believe in Australian jobs, and it's clear that they do not. And so I call on the Abbott government to step up, to support these workers, to just plain care. I call on the government to commit to securing jobs and training for those affected by their irresponsible and callous decision-making, because, Deputy Speaker, these workers need opportunities, not to join the unemployment queue.
Order, call the